Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we are doing my Whateverthon second update, so it's been another 10 days, and I've read some books and we need to update you on it. If you don't know, Whateverthon is a month-long readathon hosted by Maddie at Book Browsing Blog. It is a readathon where you can literally read whatever you want, but we do have bingo boards to get us just like extra prompts. I am co-hosting one of the teams, Team Beach Readers, with Ashley from A Frolic Through Friction, Steph from Steph's Loves, and India from What India Reads, and it's a heck of a good time, but I need to update you on what my bingo board will look like. So the first book I read, I'll put right up in the screen over here, was Haunting Adeline. This is like a dark romance thrilling book. So we are following Adeline, who moves into her grandmother's family home. So it's been in this gothic big mansion has been in our home for a very long time. Adeline soon finds a journal from her great-grandmother talking about how her grandmother was stalked and then falls in love with her stalker and then is murdered, and no one knows who murdered her. So it kind of becomes this like murder mystery of trying to figure out who killed Adeline's grandmother, but at the same time it seems like the past is reliving itself because Adeline has a stalker, and she may be falling in love with her stalker. And so obviously trigger warnings for stalking, there's also trigger warnings for sexual assault, and I would say the glorification of both of those because we all are falling in love with our stalker who does not the greatest things. I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 stars. Now, in my review on Goodreads, I do say that if I critically rated this book, I would probably give it like a 2. Like, critically, this book for me sucked. There's so many plot holes. Things are so unbelievable. But I was here for a good time. I was on the ride. I enjoyed where the book went. I sped through it. For a dark romance, it is quite long. But we had some good smut scenes. There's a gun scene in particular that I really enjoyed. And it was so wildly unbelievable, but like, escapism, man. Like, I'm not falling in love with a stalker, but I was here for Adeline falling in love with her stalker. There's a whole other plot line going around in this book, which is where the unbelievableness really comes into play. It's not even unbelievable falling in love with your stalker. I mean, unbelievable, but like, I could believe it, and they did a really good job of making me believe why. But there's a whole other plot line with like him being like a Batman vigilante and all of that. But still, I gave this book 3 stars based on enjoyment. I had a really good time, and there we have it. I don't really have much else to say about it. For Haunting Adeline, it will be a dark romance. I may be slightly cheating on this one, but it will be a summer thriller because, let me tell you, this book was spooky. Like, I was thrilled. Like, it was thrilling. Like, better than some thrillers I've read. I was sitting here like, oh my god, I'm so creeped out. Like, the author does this so well. This is the second book I've read from the author. I read her novella In the Same World before, which they do say that you should read before Haunting Adeline, and I will say I struggled because I felt like reading the novella I knew too much going into Haunting Adeline, but if I hadn't read the novella, I didn't know enough. So it's a win-win, lose-lose kind of situation. So just do whatever you think is best, but there is a novella that is weird as heck, but I gave 4 stars, called Satan's Affair. But it was thrilling. I was spooked. I was scared. I'm counting it as a summer thriller. Like, I mean, there's a man getting into your house and watching you sleep from your closet. Terrifying. And then less read genre because I don't actually read dark romance or thriller books that often. Now, the next book I read and finished was Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. This book I gave 5 stars. I need a coffee break. This one was, it's a classic. It was written in the 60s. Anne McCaffrey is a very big sci-fi writer, and this is her fantasy series, and it's the biggest series. I will definitely be picking up way more in this series, and probably way more Anne McCaffrey in general, because this is in the running for best book of the year. Like, I loved Malice, and I'm staring at Malice right now and being like, I loved you, but I also loved this just as much, but they're very different books. Malice is that slow burn, in-depth description fantasy book that we all know and love, something like Brandon Sanderson. This is fast-paced, 300 pages, amazingness. Like, so much happens in this book that, like, every word matters. Typically when I read a chunky fantasy, sometimes I'm like, I can skim past these descriptions, they don't matter. This book, I could not skip past a single word. Every word that Anne McCaffrey puts on the page matters to the integrity of the story, the integrity of the characters. It's incredible. This is following the world of Pern, where every couple years they have these things called threads in the red star that start to fall and threaten society. Kind of like fire burning ashes from the sky, like, that are just gonna destroy everything. We have these dragons and dragon riders who protect the world from these things. But over time, the society has lost faith in the dragon riders. The threads have not fallen for a really long time. They no longer believe they're a threat or they matter. They're losing interest and they're losing faith in what they've been taught. They're doing things that go against everything. And so you're seeing this kind of struggle as the threads come back, and the world now needs these dragon riders, and they also need a dragon queen. Amazing companion dragons. Aragon before Aragon. Incredible. Yeah, I don't know, Anne McCaffrey has created this most vivid world, and these dragons that are still very unique. Like, I feel like I've never seen dragons done the way this is, and the world that it's done in, and I am an Anne McCaffrey stan now. You will probably see an Anne McCaffrey shelf sometime in my future, because I need to read them all. This is like the start of like a 30-book series, well, realm, like kind of like Realm of the Elderlings, where there's different trilogies and duologies. That's how this is made up into, and yeah, I'm excited to deep dive into this. So with Dragonflight, recently hauled, because it hadn't been hauled on the channel at the time that I had read it. It has since then been hauled in like a video like 3 days ago or something, but it wasn't hauled when I read it, so I feel like it counted. Fave genre, a 5-star fantasy read. How perfect for fave genre. And then a one-word title, because Dragonflight is one word. I always thought it was 2. One word. I had a lot of bingos on here because I've also done guilt-free activity because I bought a Kindle. And I feel like that counts. I bought a Kindle, guilt-free, right? So I will probably just go over afterwards all the bingos I got, but I'm gonna have got them all because I still have one more book to talk to you about. So the last book I read in these 10 days, I actually finished last night, City of Dusk by Tara Sim. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. Orbit sent it to me. Thank you, Orbit. I absolutely hated this book. 1 star. I think it's quite funny that I think the worst book of the year for me came right after potentially the best book of the year. I have so many thoughts on this book and why it didn't work for me and why I didn't like it. I can see how it'll work for other people, and so I think for lots of people you'll think my 1 star is harsh if I say that. I rate books based on my own enjoyment, not based on the fact that they are going to be good for you, and the critical feelings I have on this book also gave it a 1 star. Ran it through Crawpile, gave it a 1 star. This book is Tara Sim's first debut adult book, so she's written a lot of YA before. So this was her first time trying adult, and the more I've read books from debut adult books, it's a hard gap. It's a hard bridge, and it really shows in this book. Because the characters, to me, are very one-dimensional. They're all about 21, 22, but they read to me like they're 18. The dialogue in here is where I think that you see most of the YA influence. Like, the way they talk to each other is cringe, and their motivations were very young adult to me. And YA is not a negative term. I do want to stress that. Like, I am complaining about this book being YA, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. It's just why it didn't work for me, because I'm growing out of YA. I no longer like YA. So it is a negative for me, but that doesn't mean it's a negative for everyone, and I do think that maybe if you were trying to get into adult, you would enjoy this dialogue. But this is not the only reason I didn't like this book, the YA terminology, but their motivations were so one-dimensional. Essentially, they're told something, so they do something. Or we have 2 characters in here who hate each other, but we're never really given a reason why they hate each other. Yes, they're heirs competing for a throne, but the rest of them are all friends, so why do these 2 hate each other? Like, I needed more motivation. They just talk about how the one girl's reckless. Well, why? Like, why do we hate her? There's a big issue for me with this book and repetitiveness. So we'd found point A out, and then let's say character 1 found point A out. We would then have to go through every other character finding point A out. You can skip past that. We can believe that character A is then gonna go tell character A to Z the point. I will believe that. I don't necessarily need to see every character's reaction, especially if their reactions are just like, okay, let's do it then. Or you should put them all in a room and just tell them that way. But that's not even all the issue with the repetitiveness. We were just always setting new things up. At one point in this book, there's literally a line saying something. It says the line, and then the next line is, but we knew that already. And yes, we knew that already. You've told us 1,800 times. Don't tell us again. Like, we get it. We're not dumb. And I think that also for me is something with adult books, and a lot of the adult books I read, they think of you as I don't want to say smarter, but like a more aged reader. So you can kind of agree, like you can kind of understand things under the writing. Like, I don't need everything spelt out to me. A lot of adult books will just infer things and they expect you to know. And that's something I really enjoy. This book didn't do that. They told you everything. So I felt like this book struggled because it's not YA enough for YA and it's not adult enough for adult for me. That's my own personal taste. The other really big negative I have of this book is that it's just doing way too much. I felt like someone needed to shake the author and say, less can be more. Because at the end of this book, we were reading it for the officially book club, so we have a whole Discord where we're talking about it. It was broken out into parts. During part 4, I say, finally a twist I didn't see coming, but I probably should have seen it coming. But the thing is, I had no enjoyment in this twist because I was just so sick of twists. And also, I didn't get the fulfillment of trying to figure out the twist because it wasn't like puzzle piece. Like there was just so much going on that you didn't get that chance to like think and strategize what was going on because things were coming out of left field every 5 minutes. So I said it's like a puzzle where there's one puzzle piece and you're trying to find, like, it's not like you're trying to find that puzzle piece, but there's so many other puzzle pieces being jammed into that spot. So when you finally find that puzzle piece, you're like, did it fit or did it just get jammed in there? Yeah, there's a bunch of things that come out of left field. There's one scene in particular that really happens, and if you read the book, you probably know what I'm talking about, with one of our characters out of nowhere does this thing. And then it's never talked about again. This thing is so bizarre, so out of context, so out of character. You hear it in one chapter afterwards where she briefly mentions that she did that thing, and then never again. We have no explanation for it. Nothing. So I just wanted to say to the author, like, less is more. This book had so much potential for me, but I don't get what it's doing anymore. I felt like this itself should have been 3 books. Like, we should have spent more time setting things up. Like, so much happens in this book, but yet nothing happens. I can't even really explain to you these thoughts, because I just have so many confusing thoughts on this story. What is going on? By the end of this book, I was just like, I have no idea what's going on, and I'm 100 pages from the end. Like, I don't know what endgame is here. I don't know what the plot of this book was anymore, because it had just gone this way and that way and this way and that way, and I just did not enjoy this. Like, I had no fun in the end reading this. The threads weren't there for me. Like, I'm gonna compare this book to, if you've read the Witchland series and the last final book that we just came out and we were all just like, how did we get here? What the fuck? And it just took the enjoyment out of reading. That's this book too. And Witchlands does it better in my opinion. I enjoyed Witchlands way more than this. So, yeah. I just didn't like it. So, probably the worst book of the year for me. Which is saying a lot because I read Desperate Measures this year. But I would rather read Desperate Measures again than this. So, I said it. So at least we'll get points from reading it. So City of Dusk is a political fantasy, which has me blacking out the board, because the only other thing I have is a guilt-free activity, which I don't know if I said already, but I bought a Kindle. I felt like that was guilt-free enough. But, every book can count for 3 prompts, so I'm still putting it on for 3 prompts. So, to keep it easy, I'm just going to do poll pick, because my Patreons picked it in one of the polls for my TBR game this month. And then it is fantasy, even though I hated it, let's count it as favorite genre, because fantasy is my favorite genre. But yeah, so I read 3 books. some 5 stars, some 1 stars, some in between stars. Also, I will say that this has put me at reading 7 books, and my goal is 8 books for the month. And I'm reading currently today, as of the 21st, which will be in the next update. I am currently reading both The Sword of Kaigen and Riley Sager's new book, which I will probably finish both those really quickly because I still have a lot of books on the TBR that I need to get to, including the one for the Backlist Book Club, which is Ninth Reign. I need to read that this month. Other than that, we just had a good time. We blacked out the board. Should we count how many bingos that is? I have no idea how many bingos that is. Let's do it in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from Haunting Adeline. From Dragonflight, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 from Dragonflight. City of Dusk will just be this one that matters, and that is 1, 2, I think. I'm gonna redouble count that before I actually input them into the Whateverthon thing, because I did that really quickly, but I think that's what I did. I now no longer remember how many that was. The next update will come out for the 1st of July, which will be from the 21st to the 30th of June, and my reads in that, and the new bingo board, because I'm going to wipe this bingo board clean and start a new one. I'm not doing a rearranged bingo board just because I have made this myself, and that takes way too much work and time to make a new one, so I'm just going to reuse this one. And yeah, if you are on Team Beach Readers, let me know how many points you've done. If you're not on Team Beach Readers, also let me know. And if you have a favorite book so far of the last 10 days, let me know down below. And if you made it all this way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a rainbow emoji of some sort because it is Pride Month. And, oh, I also forgot to say if anything had rep in it. Dragonflight, interestingly enough, does have rep. I'm not going to count as LGBTQ plus rep because it's not on page, but I will count as any kind of rep because it is smaller. For a book in the 60s, hear me out, this has decent, there is talk about gay sex, but it's all off page, but they do kind of infer it. This book came out in the 60s with a female author. This is groundbreaking. That I think that it does get points for even having it off page but referenced, in my opinion. City of Dusk is queer. There are some... It is just accepted in this world. One of our main characters' siblings is trans, and we have two main characters, I believe, who are kind of questioning their identity and coming to terms with who they are. So I don't want to spoil too much, but I do believe that they would count. And Haunting Adeline has no representation, so it's probably the opposite of representation, because, you know, dark romance and triggers. But there we go. Yeah, if you've made it to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji, just say you were here. I was already saying this, but leave me a rainbow emoji. It is Pride Month. Let's be proud, let's be who we are, and let's support all of our queer friends and community. And if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.